I would like to tell you briefly about a friend of mine who came here today with me. And when we were here, this was 4 hours ago, there was no one in this room. So it was a very different feeling. There's a very different spirit in the room. This woman lives in the projects in Chattanooga. She's been here in Chattanooga nearly 3 decades and had never been to Coolidge Park until just a few months ago. So the projects she lives in are probably, as the crow flies, 2 miles from Coolidge Park. And imagine living there for nearly, for a long, long time and never going to somewhere that, I mean, it's the epicenter, right, we would say, of the city. And the only reason she went a few months ago was because she was involved in a march against police brutality. So it's interesting, I think it's very tragic that she had not gone, and then it almost maybe, I don't know if it adds to the tragedy or subtracts some, that the reason she makes it to Coolidge Park is to protest against police violence. So hopefully, I think she will figure into our conversation tonight. I invited her, she couldn't come. And when she was in here today, she said she'd never been in an art museum before. She'd seen one on TV. And this was her first time. She was very moved. It was very like, how do I say this? I wish you had been able to be a part of it, bearing witness to her presence here. All this to say, when she saw this image, she said, one of the first things she said was, "This is so sad." Now, do you see any sadness in this painting?
Yes.
What is the sadness that you see?
The couple in the middle.
What's that?
The couple in the middle.
The couple in the middle.
Yes, and they feel out of place.
I would never have given this painting a second thought without their gaze. If this couple in the middle had been looking elsewhere, looking out the window, looking over this way, it's beautiful, it's great, but we would have been sitting around another picture, another image. My friend who was here, who said this is sad, one of the next things she said was, they are all looking past them. As a columnist, I was drawn to this picture because I like to tell stories, and I tell stories because I think they are the universal way that we understand ourselves. And in a very beautiful way, stories, they're often called myths, are able to unite us. Yeah? So we have this universal quality of stories. The great teachers tell stories. I mean, this is easy to talk about. So you have stories as this sort of central part of the human experience. So I was drawn to this because it seems like there is a couple in the middle that for whatever reason does not belong. I think asking us for a response to their isolation and marginalization. And I would also ask that we recognize that in one way or another, we have all been like that too. Race, class, sexuality, gender, able-bodiedness, health, anything. You had your hand?
Well, I've noticed, I mean, homeless people feel invisible. Sometimes older women feel invisible.
Right.
This couple, I think, is being treated as if they're invisible. And to me, it feels like they're looking to us to say, please see us. Please witness us.
That's a great thing
I
to
think
say.
it's odd that we're talking about the couple in the middle and not the individuals that are ignoring these people. I mean, that says something for, I think it's saying something about society myself.
Not long ago, I'd say a few years, a good friend of mine and I were in town. He had come in town from Colorado to talk about issues like this at a conference, issues of justice and things like this, right? And both of us come from very deeply privileged backgrounds, and we were talking about these things in, we thought, very honest ways. And after this conference, we went to, what is this, Tony's, and ate and drank and had a great time. And as you know, Tony's, when you're loud, you're very full. And there's also tons of food and bread and everything on it. So we had these thoughts of like marginalized folk and our responsibility to them in our minds with the wine and the pasta. And so we said, all right, there's all this pasta left. And I said, my friend is Johan. I said, Johan, I know what we can do. Right under the Veterans Bridge, if we're going to cross Veterans Bridge towards downtown, away from the North Shore, you know I don't know what they're called, but they're the large stone structures. that you can go across if you're going down to the Riverwalk. Everybody know where we are? You can walk to them from Tony's. People sleep under there. There are people sleeping there. There are people there right now. And so in my grandiosity, I thought, we will wrap up this bread and take it and just leave it there. You sleep under a bridge, chances are you're hungry. Chances are even greater you haven't been to Tony's in a while. So I am thinking this would be a good thing. This would be a proper and right thing, right? Charity. So we back it up and we go over there and we go sort of like up the embankment just a step, no more than I would come to your house and enter in and leave bread on your table. We didn't go all the way up there, that would be rude. So we just leave it right there. And we left and we thought, well, we didn't solve poverty, but at least we did this little something. And as the Southern saying goes, what am I doing? Our hearts were in the right place, right? The day after, this was a Saturday or Sunday, I was on a run downtown, and I ran right by there. This is probably 24 hours later, maybe less, maybe more, around that. And the bag was right where I left it, but it had been torn open, and the bread was scattered everywhere.
Some animal.
And I didn't count the bread, but I know enough to know how much bread we put in there and how much I saw, and there was not much missing. Which is to say that I thought animal, but then I think, well, if it was an animal, it would have had a day to eat and it would have been all gone. And if it was somebody that wanted it and just happened to drop it, there would have been more taken. But from my judgment, it looked like most, if not all, of the bread was still there. Cast open, cast about, right? Now, I don't know any more of the story than this, but here's what I learned from it. Well, you tell me. What did I learn from that story? What does that story mean?
Well, you made assumptions.
I did. I made a big one. What was the main assumption that I made?
That they would eat what you brought them.
Right?
And that they were hungry.
What's that?
And that they were hungry.
That they were hungry?
That they would appreciate
It's
it.
free food, right? You think about homeless, they need free food.
You were throwing leftovers to the dog under the table.
Exact. Yes. Yes. So if you slept under the bridge, who would want that? Who would want to be, here are scraps from my table? Right? So this, for me, was turning point's a big word. This was something I'll never forget as a lesson in the difference between charity and an encounter. The difference between charity and dignity, or love, acceptance, all those are the same words, right? So I'm going to stop talking and ask you this question. If, so far we've gotten to this point, if this is a couple that's outcast or marginalized or sleeping under the bridge, metaphorically, and we are comfortable and not sleeping under the bridge, and I would suggest, even though their outcastness is universal, and we know what it feels like, I would suggest, respectfully, that in this image we are not those two people, most of the time. My friend today had never been inside this building. She identified with them. I come here and whenever I want to, yes? What is the response? What is the right response to this?
One of the things that was brought to the forefront of my mind is the way that people see things through their own experiences.
Right.
So for example, earlier using the term projects, for me and for you, those were the projects.
Right.
For them, that's their home,
Right.
that's a community, that's where my grandfather maybe lived.
And I told you that she had never been to Coolidge Park. The flip side of this is I had never been to College Hill Quarters. Right? And so to think, well, I'm going to bring her here to the Hunter and feel good, right? That didn't mean a lot. But it's got to go, I've got to go there too. When the tornadoes came, right? This tornado response that so many places we immediately responded with either with thought or without thought. We did something. Strangers, people we didn't know. And if you look at that, if you take a step back, that does not make any sense. Why would we give our stuff to people we don't know, who have no connection to us, unless there is something that binds us together? And I would argue that act that we saw so widespread in the tornadoes, and the response to the tornadoes that came through, reveals this connection that exists between all of us. And so I would say that this word charity, this act of, it reflects that it's a good thing, it's all right. But the better thing, hopefully that so many of you said better than I could, is that the next step is this deeper level of respect and truth and love. And I read recently, we'll perhaps end with this, that Darwin, in his great work, we put so much emphasis on competition and survival of the fittest as his legacy. In fact, he writes far more about compassion and cooperation. That if we read his work, he's going to point to compassion and cooperation as in things that far outnumber this competitive streak in us. So if we have this image of America, perhaps, maybe we can let it, the last thing sort of here is this, perhaps we have this great cooperation and generosity that exists as the American story. We know it doesn't, but we also know that it can. So that's my last thought. Thank you so much for being here tonight.